And I mean, we've seen this, right? Nobody is exempt from challenge, from adversity, from obstacles. We all have it in our life. It's going to come sooner or later. That's what the 41 life is, though. Overcoming those challenges, overcoming those obstacles as they come at us and coming out stronger on the other side. So that's what we're here for. That's what we're about. We want to provide encouragement. We want to help people to keep going through those times, and we want to have some fun along the way. This is the 41 life. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another week of the 41 Life. This is episode 8. And as always, we are very excited to have you guys with us. I'm David.
And I'm Devin.
And we hope you guys have had a great week so far. I know Devin has really enjoyed her week. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, specifically today, I got 2 things that I have really been wanting on MacBid. And if you don't know what MacBid is, you're missing out. Because basically what it is it's like these, I don't know if it all comes from Amazon or where it comes from, but
I think it's just various
it's
places.
a ton of stuff. It's like electronics and house stuff and kitchen stuff and animal stuff, and basically you bid on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could get really expensive stuff for cheap, and I'll kind of like look for things that I want and kind of have in my mind how much I'm willing to pay. I lose a lot. I lose 90% of the time because
Yeah.
I'm not willing to go. Like, I want to get a good deal.
Yeah. Well, you're not like you said, you have a price limit and you don't want to go past that.
Yeah.
And
well, I won 2 things this week.
You did.
So because I wanted to upgrade our guest bathroom from like the builder grade stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got like a really pretty like black light fixture with like glass for $8.
Yeah.
Originally $90. So
yeah.
And then I got 2 mirrors because I want to take down our big mirror, and I think I got those for $23. And they were originally like $130.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Devin is very excited when she gets deals and comes out on top like that. So she's been very excited for.
It's like a whole thing though to go in there and pick it up. Like if you've never been, it's a massive warehouse. You've got to go and find your stuff, and it's like a whole thing. And I didn't realize
I wasn't with her when she did this, so
yeah, I did not realize how heavy those mirrors are going to be.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty shocked. I mean, not shocked. I'm pretty impressed that you were able to get those in the car by yourself.
Well, there was a very nice woman who helped me.
Yeah.
She saw that I was struggling.
There you go.
And she said, "Do you need help?" And I said, "Yes, I do."
There you go. People helping people. That's what we need sometimes.
And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize these are going to be so heavy." And she's like, "That's what you want. That means you got a good quality mirror." And I was like, "Yeah." So even better.
There you go.
$23, 2 of them, 2 for $23.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Can't wait for you to put it up.
I was going to say that means I have a project coming up. So
yeah.
I
change the light fixture and take down the original mirror and put up 2 new mirrors.
Yeah. Yeah. Mirrors are, like you said, they're heavy. So we'll get there.
Yeah.
But I think it'll look really good when it's finished.
I'm currently bidding on a faucet to match.
Mm-hmm.
And a new shower head to match. I've been trying to get that for a while, but we'll see. I'm bidding on 2 right now, so we'll see.
Our bathroom's getting some upgrades. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. I found out some cool news this week that I had kind of heard before, but not really that it was confirmed until today. As you guys may know, I mentioned something about Michael Scott in one of the first couple episodes, and The Office is one of my favorite shows of all time. I feel like that, Parks and Rec, Modern Family,
New Girl.
like, what is it?
New Girl.
Yeah, New Girl's in there. Like the sitcoms were, not all of them are great, but those are pretty solid.
Yeah.
And I think The Office is kind of like the OG of all that.
Mm-hmm.
And they just officially announced that they're doing pretty much a reunion for like one season where I don't know the details, but I saw kind of a little bit of something, and I think that um, Jim is the manager
Oh, I
or
didn't know this.
regional manager, and I think that there was some of the original cast going to be in there, not all of them. It was going to kind of be like a little bit of a mixed bag of
Yeah,
who shows up and who doesn't. But as a major fan of The Office, I think that's
that's very
exciting, and
exciting.
I'm excited for when that time
I
comes.
almost don't like it though when they do that because I feel like it takes away from what it originally was. You know what I
That
mean? Like, can you really do a reunion justice?
that's what I thought too, but they have they have a very good director. I wouldn't consider myself, a super fan necessarily, but I do like digging into behind the scenes stuff and figuring out, kind of the secret ins and outs maybe. And I've known this part for a while that Mose, Dwight's
Hmm.
cousin, was one of the writers for the show. He also helped with Parks and Rec. I
Yeah,
think what is it, Brooklyn 99 or
yeah. We
something
haven't
like.
watched that one, so
No, that's on the list of to watch shows. So, but I knew he was one of the writers and directors and everything. But I found out that the whole setup in the back with the annex, that was the other writers for the show. Because so I was listening to something or reading something, I don't even remember, but they said basically they would get there like
hmm
a full-time day job. I mean, they would be in an actual office
yeah,
space, and they'd be messing around on computers and doing all this, but a lot of the stuff that they would write in would happen on a day-to-day basis,
yeah,
just kind of stuff that they thought was funny and they would test out.
yeah,
To do that, you can't really do that in the office space while they're trying to film everything. So the annex was kind of created with the writers who are
yeah.
also in the show. So it
That's
was
so funny. I
Toby,
did not know this.
yeah, it was Toby, Ryan, and Kelly. Those are the characters in the show that were on that crew. So everybody in the annex, that was why they made that so they could basically be in certain scenes and kind of control the filming
Hmm.
while also being able to have time to write the script and kind of adjust things as they need to. So
Yeah,
yeah, I thought that was kind of cool as I learned
yeah,
that
it
because
is
it
cool.
makes sense. Like they need
Hmm.
a little bit of room to get into everything. But yeah, um, sounds like they're gonna do a little fun one season reunion. Hopefully, it's good, and
So,
I believe in them. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so that's fun stuff. Good week, fun information that we learned, and Devin's fixing up the bathroom,
hmm
making everything
good
look good.
times.
Um, but where we left off last week was we had gotten a pretty good scan result. Um,
You're ready to move on.
yeah, we're thinking everything's smooth. We're into the next phase of life. The speed bump that was cancer is done, or so we thought. And I think we got me to spring training at that point.
Hmm.
So
I did not go with you
right because
because the
you guys are
store,
thinking,
yeah, there were some hiccups and with like paperwork and the IRS, and it was a whole thing. So I literally had no idea when I was going to become the owner, and I had to be there.
yeah,
I had to like literally sign paperwork the day I became the owner. So I had to like hang around to see what was going to happen with that. And
hmm
not knowing when it was going to happen, I couldn't even hardly like plan a trip to see you.
yeah.
So we did not see each other a lot at all.
I mean, anytime, especially in pro baseball, like there's quite a bit of long distance that's
Hmm.
involved, and we were very familiar with that.
We had done long distance since the day we met.
Yeah,
I mean, we had some moments obviously where we were together, but it was I mean, it was always long distance.
yeah. There were times where I would say spurts of time where we were together. Like after you graduated college, we were
Yeah.
together quite a bit.
We were together, but it's funny because together for us meant like every other week.
Yeah,
Because I would go to some away game series because normally it'd be a week at a time,
mhm.
but I couldn't keep up with all of them just because that's a lot of
It's a lot of
traveling.
travel. It's a lot of travel.
And yeah, flights and everything. So like it was still like not super frequent and
Hmm.
routine, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and this was a little different too because I mean, like you said, like there was a lot of concern. I think
Yeah.
you had seen everything that had happened. You were, we were both unsure, and really everybody was unsure of how I was going to respond
Yeah.
after treatment, the same way during treatment. So when I did have to leave to go down to spring training, it was such a bittersweet thing because I know we
Hmm.
were both excited because we had things
Yeah.
going on, like individually and together, that we
Hmm.
were excited about, but we were not thrilled to have to be
I
apart.
think I saw you like, I think I do remember visiting you, and it had been like 5 weeks
Hmm.
that we hadn't seen each other.
Yeah, because you were waiting on the paperwork and
And
all
I was
that
like, I
stuff.
can't wait forever. Like, this is way too long.
Yeah.
Like, if something crazy happens, I'll just have to fly back. Like,
Hmm.
so I think I visited you for like a week or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then went back home. And
Yeah. And I mean, spring training was probably the most, I don't want to say boring spring training that I've had, but it was definitely not normal
yeah.
because typically, I mean, you're in games, you're throwing bullpens, you're trying to make good impressions, you're trying to earn a spot on, whether it be for me, I was aiming for typically the big league team at those years leading up. Um, but everybody's trying to make a specific team that they have in mind. And that year, I knew that I wasn't making any team.
Hmm.
I knew, I mean, from our conversations right at the start of camp, we always
Yeah.
have individual meetings with, typically it's the manager and for me the pitching coach. There's a lot of conversations with those people outside of that, but there's usually one where it's kind of like, hey, here's you know going into camp, how are you feeling, what are your expectations, here's what ours are. So kind of getting on the same page and laying
Hmm.
everything out. And I remember when they told me, it's time for my meeting, or like, hey, they need to see you in the office, I was just like, okay, I don't really know what,
Yeah.
like, we kind of have talked a little bit, but I don't know what this meeting's necessarily going to be. And it was pretty much that, just saying, you know, take care of yourself during camp, do what you need
Hmm.
to do to get ready as quick as possible. But like you're going to start the season for the first time I had ever been on the injured list. I was
Yeah.
going to start the season on the injured list. And so knowing that, I, from a baseball standpoint, I did what I could each day. I tried to be the best teammate I could, tried to be uplifting, encouraging, like, just doing what I could to help the people around me. And, for the younger guys, maybe impart a little bit of what I've learned, and
Hmm.
also try to soak up as much as I could from the older guys.
Yeah.
Because we had some, you know, pretty big name guys on our team at that time that I had gotten to know a little bit before, but I was like excited to get to know them more and learn from them. I remember Chris Archer was, I mean, so good at like talking about thought process and
Hmm.
things that he had learned and things that he had done not so well that he wished he would have done better, and just a good, good guy.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Glass now, we had Corey Kluber. Like, there were some younger guys that were super talented, talented. Um, Josh Fleming, Shane McClanahan. Like, I'm leaving off a bunch of people,
Yeah.
but spring training, there's so many people that it was
Hmm.
just fun to kind of be back in the
Yeah.
clubhouse, especially after everything we'd been through.
It felt like life was kind of normal again.
Right. And I quickly realized that it was not going to be as quick of a recovery, as
Yes.
a bounce back as I expected.
And that was really
Not even,
upsetting for you.
yeah, that was kind of a tough pill to swallow
Yeah.
because I just wanted to move on. Like you said last week, I wanted
Hmm.
to kind of take this back. I wanted this to be in my control a little bit. And I was really fortunate, to be able to find people to live with at the time, roommates in spring training. And I ended up rooming, I say that, we split a house. It was me and Aaron Sleggers. He
Hmm.
was a guy coming off of, I don't know that he had surgery, but he had shoulder
Yeah.
stuff going on. And so we were kind of in the same boat through camp. And I remember he signed a little bit later, but when he came in, like, we got to know each other pretty well and decided we wanted to, if you're going to be here and I'm going to be here, we might
Yeah.
as well make the most of this. And
Mhm.
we had a lot of like common interests
Yeah.
too. Like he liked to cook, he liked to play video games, he liked to
Yeah.
get outside and move around a little.
All your
Like we
favorite
had a
things.
lot of, yeah, it was a fun time. Um, it was a fun time in the sense of having somebody else with
Mhm.
you through that.
Especially because I think he married or engaged,
Yeah,
and his fiance wasn't with him either.
yeah,
So you guys both had like spouses that weren't there.
yeah. And I mean, we just had a lot of, like I said, a lot of things that were going on in similar
Hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
And so that ended up happening, I think, at the back end of spring training. Because when I first got there, I was just staying in a hotel.
Yeah.
And then when we got kind of connected and everything worked out, because houses in spring training, if you're staying outside of the team hotel, it's kind of hard to come by.
Yeah.
And if you are fortunate to find a place,
Yeah.
you're probably going to have to pay a little bit
Oh
more.
my gosh. Yeah, they're so expensive.
Yeah. So if you can split with somebody, that's
The way to
the
go.
best scenario to be in. You know, the more the merrier typically
Yeah.
too. If you got a 4-bedroom house, then
Yep.
try to put a body in each one. Not,
Yeah.
that probably sounded a little bad, but try to try to have somebody in each one of those rooms to bring the cost down a little bit.
Yep.
Um, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbow. Like everything wasn't going perfectly. Like we talked about with recovery, things were actually progressing very well. I was just impatient. I'm not a very patient person.
Hmm.
In some ways, I'm patient. Most ways, I'm not.
And I remember velo being a topic of conversation a lot. Like you just couldn't get to your top velo.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of to be
Yeah.
expected, but I think look, the lower end of my velocity in my career, I was still a low 90s guy,
Hmm.
and I could run it up there when I needed to. But when I got to Tampa, I don't know, like I think they had like the secret sauce or something, and it just something was in the water, so I don't
Yeah.
know. But I just everything clicked. I
Hmm.
started throwing
Yeah.
harder, and the year before when I was with Durham, I was throwing mid to upper 90s.
Yeah.
And I remember one game in particular, it was probably, one of the most notable games in my mind because I was throwing the hardest and it was the first game that I had pitched against an Orioles affiliate. We were
Hmm.
playing Norfolk. And so there might have been a little extra adrenaline going to,
Yeah.
get my buddies out that I knew from the year before. But I remember I was sitting 97. I think I dropped down to 96 a couple times, and I was 97,
Yeah.
got up to 98 like a handful of times. And the next day, I was talking to the pitching coach that I knew really well over there. I had him in Double A for a couple years, and then also in Triple A when I was
Hmm.
there. So we got pretty close over that time. And he was like, "Man, like, what did they do to you over there? Like, what happened? I've never seen that out of you." I was like, "I couldn't tell you."
Yeah.
I said it. Everything was just working just right. And
Yeah.
so, you know, that was kind of I wouldn't say expectation, but the hope that I would
Yeah.
be able to get back to that very quickly. And as we discussed last episode, chemo's pretty hard on the
Yep.
body. And so it just didn't happen right away. And I remember I was trying, I mean, just so hard.
Hmm.
I was in the weight room, I was doing conditioning, probably pushing myself a little bit more
Yeah.
than I should have. But I just I was just trying to do everything I could to get back there because I knew that I was capable of it. I was finally starting to feel a little bit better physically. Mentally, I was, kind of in a better place just
Hmm.
because I was like, oh, yeah, like this makes sense now. Like we figured out the problem. Now we should perform better.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I just remember we had a couple really, really good pitching coaches down there, like coordinators, coaches, different positions, all that stuff. And I mean, every bullpen I threw, they're like, you're going to get there. You're going to get there.
Hmm.
Like, we just got to be patient. We just got to keep working. We got to do this. And so day by day, we were just chugging along and working. And I just could not get past upper 80s.
Yep.
I remember I got to the point where like 90 was what I was topping at. And they were like, that just that's just not you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know. I just cannot get there. I don't know. I'm doing everything I can. I just can't.
Yeah.
Um, and there was so much understanding by the people who were there with me on a daily basis, but
Mm-hmm.
professional baseball is a business.
Yep.
And the whole time I was like, man, I'm ready to get out. I'm ready to get up to Durham, get back to Durham, be with the guys that I know. Because at this point, everybody had gone to their teams.
Yep.
And like I said, it was me and Sluggers living together. And there were a couple other guys that were rehabbing Tommy John.
And
That
also, it was going to be easier for us to see each other.
absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
you were going to be 3.5 hours, 4 hours down the road instead of a plane ride.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a component of it. Performance was a component. And I just remember slowly it just deteriorated me.
Yeah.
I I remember early on, we were both of us, me and Sluggers both were kind of, keeping this like optimistic mindset. Like,
Yeah.
man, we're going to be out of here soon. Like, we just got to hang in there a little bit longer and keep working hard. And like, we were encouraging and helping each other. And we continued to do that. But both of us just had, I mean, it felt like setback or, something we were facing after another one after another, after another, after
Yeah.
another.
I
And
remember being worried about you
yeah.
because I knew that you weren't happy. Like I could tell on the phone.
Hmm.
And then I could really tell when I was with you that
Yeah,
you just were really struggling.
it
I
was
think
just
you were
hard.
processing everything that had happened to you
Yeah, yeah. I had a lot of time on my hands.
and the way it wrecked everything.
Yes, yeah.
It was a lot was stolen from you.
Hmm. And there were, like you said, there was a lot of processing that came with that. Um, it was just tough. I mean, I can't even pinpoint, exactly why or like what specifically it
Mm-hmm.
was. I think it was such a combination of everything. And I just remember, you know, probably a month into being down there because I ended up finally getting assigned to Durham in June,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of the middle back end of June. And I was so pumped. I
Yeah.
was so pumped. But I also, in the back of my mind, was like,
Not sure if I'm
I
ready.
don't know. I don't know what more I could do to be ready. But I just don't know if physically this is going to hold up and I'm going
Yeah.
to be able to get guys out the way that I should be able to.
Well, we actually were looking at pictures of that time, and like we were like, look at how inflamed you still
Yeah.
were. Like your body was still like so affected by the
Hmm.
chemo.
Yeah, I mean, looking at, team pictures from that time, it just was like it was a whole different person.
Yeah.
And, I mean, again, we're just doing the best we can and
Mm-hmm.
just trying to keep rolling along, keep going. And so, like I said, finally we get to the point where I do get assigned to Durham.
Mm-hmm.
They tell me you're headed up, you're going to be there, and we were so excited just to kind of
Yeah.
be getting. I
We
mean,
were like,
just to be back around an environment that
we
we were
just
used
thought
to.
life was going to be a little bit normal again.
Right. And so I get there. I had a conversation with my manager when I first got there, and he said, "We're pumped to have you back here, but we're going to try to find a time for you to get in there when a little bit lower stress, kind of work you back in." And I ended up pitching. It was probably within a week of me being there. It had been a few days, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I remember it was
In
against
Jacksonville.
Miami's AAA
Yeah.
Jacksonville. So it was kind of ironic that that
Yeah.
was the team that I was pitching against. And I remember when they called my name on the walkie-talkie and said to
Yeah.
get going, like everybody was just like, "Yes, like let's go. This is
Mm-hmm.
awesome."
That was an emotional moment.
Yeah, and I had to kind of block everything out, and not think about it
Yeah.
until afterwards. But I get loose, I get in there, and I remember I had a 1-2-3 inning,
Mm-hmm.
struck a guy out, got a mile high pop up to end the inning,
Yeah.
and after that third out, like I remember our dugout gave me a standing ovation,
Yeah.
and I was not expecting this. And I mean, like even thinking about it now, like I mean, it gets me emotional. Like it
Mm-hmm.
chokes me up a little
Yeah.
bit because those like so many of those guys that were on that team. I mean, the pitching coach, the manager, my teammates, like they were checking in on us all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had so many close friends on that team, and not only like it was one of those things where as I was walking off, and I mean, I don't know how I made it off the field without just losing it.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember I hugged every single guy,
Yeah.
and there were a handful of hugs that were, you know, a little bigger than others because they were guys that had kind of like really been in it with us, and
Mm-hmm.
um, that was a really special moment. Like
Yeah.
that was one of those times where I look back and I say, okay, like no matter what, like that's something we can kind of hold on to,
Mm-hmm.
and that was fun. But after that, it did not go quite as
Mm-hmm.
well. So it was almost like that moment was given to us to allow us a little bit of enjoyment,
Yeah.
I think. And I mean, I was excited to show up to the ballpark, like be with those guys again. I was getting to see you more consistently. Like I felt like things were progressing in the right direction. But my next outing, I think I had three more outings after that, and I did not pitch well in
Mm-hmm.
any of
It
them.
was
But
it was so upsetting.
it was upsetting mostly for me because, performance is what performance is. There's going to be times where it's good and times where it's bad. But what was difficult was like all the work that I had put in,
Yeah.
I, I, I just couldn't recover.
Yeah.
So my velo was down. I pitched like 3 days later and I was throwing like mid 80s.
Yeah.
And when you're used to throwing mid 90s and then you start throwing mid 80s, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
It doesn't typically work out as well. And the numbers did reflect that. And so I remember it was after a game against the AAA for St. Louis. It was a Memphis Redbirds, and we were in Durham, and I did not pitch well. It was a Saturday night, and we had a full crowd. We weren't winning. Like it was, we were either up or down by a few runs. I don't remember. I think we were down, and so I came in and didn't pitch well, and I went to our pitching coach. I was like, hey, like we got to figure something out here.
Yeah.
Like I need to go on the injured list, do some, almost like a rehab stint or something, or like we just got to figure something out because I'm not helping the team. I'm not helping myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's benefiting right here. So, we can maybe talk a little bit more tomorrow, but like, I just wanted to get this conversation going. And he was like, no, I agree. He said, I've kind of been concerned
Mm-hmm.
about you for a few weeks, pretty much since you got here, not because you've done anything wrong, but just because of everything you've been through
Yeah.
and how hard it is on you. And so we kind of left it that night where we'll make, he said, I'll make some phone calls, we'll figure out a game plan, and we'll reconvene tomorrow. So at this point, it's early July. Actually, that day that we were reconvening was my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I couldn't be there.
yes,
Why? I don't remember.
I don't remember the reason. I remember you were really really upset you couldn't be there,
Yeah.
and I'm not. I
You're
I
not a
don't
birthday
I
person.
don't. Yeah, I just don't get.
You
You
don't
know,
really care that much.
I don't know. They're cool. Like you're a year older. Like that's awesome. You made it
Yeah.
through another year. That one was kind of like
That was a little more meaningful.
it felt a little bit
I feel like your
significant.
birthdays are a lot more meaningful
Probably yeah.
now.
Um, but I remember we had I think an earlier game. It was a 1 o'clock. Usually Sunday games are 1 o'clock. So
Yeah.
we had chapel that morning, and I remember on the way to chapel, I was talking to our pitching coach, and I was just like, "Hey, like when we get a chance later on, like I'd like to talk a little bit, see if you had heard anything." And I don't even know how to explain it. I could just sense something was off.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's not good.
Yeah.
And so we go, we go through everything for the day. Don't I knew I wasn't pitching that day, so I just was, kind of hanging out in the bullpen. And afterwards, after the game, I remember I got in the clubhouse. We won, and
Yeah.
so we were doing like our clubhouse celebration. Like
Mhm.
we had a good time after wins. Like it
Yeah.
was wins were much better than losses because
Yeah.
we had a good time in the clubhouse afterwards. And so once all that kind of faded out, my pitching coach said, "Hey, they need to see you in the office." Usually, if you get called into the office, I'm sure this is very similar with most other jobs. If the boss is calling you in, you're either about to get really good news or
Really bad.
really not so great news.
Yeah.
And I had no idea at this point what I was about to walk into because we had just left things so open ended. And I remember when I walked in, he was like, "Today's your birthday, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh man." He said, I hate to have this conversation with you because you've done everything right. You've, I mean, you've gotten after it. You've worked so hard to get to where you are right now. And after everything you've been through, like, we're so proud of everything you've done. But unfortunately, like, this is a business and, we have had conversations and we have to release you.
Mhm.
And, I knew it wasn't a personal thing. I completely understood it, but it it did kind of stink it was on my birthday, especially because you had talked with one of my other teammates that we were good friends with and basically set up like a birthday cake being in the clubhouse.
Mhm.
And so I remember having to go pack my bag and do everything and everybody was kind of like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's not good news." And some people were really mad about it. And some
Yeah.
people were just kind of like, "Man, I'm so sorry," blah, 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 whatever. But by the time I got all that done, like the cake was gone. And I mean, I didn't even get to eat any of my birthday cake. That was the most disappointing part.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
yeah, so uh, that was a tough birthday.
Yeah,
It's one I think that will always be
it
remembered.
will be. And how
And
old did you turn?
um,
And how old did you turn?
29. So at least it wasn't like 30 where it's like right on
Yeah,
the
just
new
29.
decade mark.
Nah, 29.
Yeah, who cares about that year anyway? So I sign all my paperwork and everything, and we basically they said if there's anything you need, don't hesitate. Like again,
And you said I need to stay here.
yeah,
I need to still have
in
a
a
job.
lot of ways I wanted to be like there we can figure
There are
something out.
some things that I need.
Yeah, but like I said, baseball happens fast. So I
Yeah.
mean, that night everything happened. I think the next morning was when they were going on the road. They were traveling on Monday, so I had to stop by to sign the paperwork, and I got
Hmm.
in the car and I came home.
I do remember when you got home, we went and we got Mexican.
Hmm.
And I remember being really sad, but I was also in a weird way relieved because I was just so worried about you pushing your body to the limit like
Yeah.
that. And I just never had a peace about it. And I just
Hmm.
worried so much when we were apart. So I was glad to have you back, like in my sight,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It's also hard to be sad when you're eating Mexican.
That's another thing. And I had a
That's,
Diet Coke too.
yeah.
So,
I
I
mean,
mean,
perfect.
yeah,
What yeah. So
unfazed.
at this point, I'm home. I had pretty much said like I've been getting after it, busting my butt for a while
Yeah,
now.
gonna rest.
Maybe the best thing for me is some rest.
Yeah.
And you not only agreed with that, you're like, thank God you're finally
Yeah.
understanding this.
Yes.
Um, I remember you when I told you that, or like we had that conversation of like I think I just need to shut it down for a little bit.
Hmm.
You could just sense how happy you were
Yeah.
because you're just like, oh, I can finally relax a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I did, and so really for July and August, I, just kind of rested a little bit, let my body bounce back, and like we were talking about with the inflammation being there, it started to fade. I was getting stronger. Everything was moving in the right direction. I was, feeling pretty good. I still was having a little bit of side effects, or what I
Mm-hmm.
thought was side effects, because it was just kind of like still a little bit of trouble breathing, not really breathing so much as it just kind of felt like if you take like a deep breath in, it just felt like there was some resistance there, and it
Yeah.
almost like made me cough when I got to like the point of like being, fully inhaled. Um, but I was like, okay, well, I went through chemo. Like that makes
Yeah.
sense. This is going to take a while to really bounce back from. And so um, I started working out, started running basically at the end of August. And I had decided, one of my teammates in Durham was Tyler Zombro. And he has an incredible story. I,
Maybe we'll have to have him
I
on.
think yeah, him and his wife are awesome people, and they're on the list of people we would like to have on here. So uh, we'll try to make that happen sooner rather than later. But he also he was playing in Durham with me at the time, but he also is one of the main operators at Tread Athletics out of Charlotte, and that is basically a pitcher development place that's very, very, very good at what they do. And
Yeah.
he is, I mean, one of the dudes over there, not just like one of the coaches. Like he's legit. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, like, how much sense would it make based on everything you've seen me throw? Like, how much sense would it make for me to come and work with you guys for an off season, like to get everything back on track? And he said, man, I think that's a great idea. I was like, awesome. So we get everything set up. I had to do, some stuff initially to kind of get a baseline of where I was at. And let me tell you, some of the stuff that they have you do does, like, to figure out where you're at, doesn't make you feel great about yourself.
And I
You
know
realize
because I filmed it all.
yeah, you realize, wow, I am really stiff in these areas.
Yeah.
I do not move well in this way. But that's the whole point of what
Yeah.
they do. They help you with those
Hmm.
things. And so we got a program set up that I was following, and
It really helped you a lot. I
it
mean,
was it was
you
amazing.
were doing so good. Like your velo started to rise.
Yeah, I was training for a couple months, and I think we had pretty much at this point gotten through the majority of the off season. I think
Yeah.
it was in December,
Yes. And
and I
we
was
felt
about to
really
start
good.
throwing bullpens. And
Yeah.
I remember I was doing like, basically just throwing into a
Hmm.
net like some velo stuff, and I was, back in the mid 90s, and I was like,
Hmm.
this is awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, like this was such a good investment. Like everything is moving in the direction that we want. And my scans up to that point I had to scan every 3 months,
Yeah.
and everything was looking pretty good. I feel like, there was no growth necessarily. It just wasn't really shrinking. It was just kind of like
Hmm.
hanging out.
Yeah.
And, you just got a big old thing hanging out in your chest,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So, um, we knew this scan in, I think it was December.
I don't think we even were worried about it because I mean, all your scans prior to that like was pointing to everything being stable.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it was on our radar really.
Nope. We
I
pretty
mean, there's
much,
always anxiety
yeah, of
before a
course.
scan,
Yeah.
but what
I
if?
mean, anybody in the whole world could go into one of these scans and find something a
Yeah.
little wonky going on in your body.
Yeah.
It's just our bodies are very resilient, and they can clean stuff up, fix stuff up, and um, it's just a little more concerning and something you have to pay a little closer attention to when you have a disease that's going on. You have to monitor things very
Yeah.
closely. And so we get to this time, like I said, I was throwing well. I think I was getting ready to throw my first bullpen, or
Hmm.
maybe not my first, but like I had kind of been working up to
And
that.
your scan was on my birthday?
That's right, your
Yeah.
birthday. We got a thing with
I
birthdays
know.
around here. And I mean, if there was a moment in all of this that I feel like everything just like stopped,
Yeah.
it was that, even more than the initial diagnosis. But as we like to do with the cliffhangers, that's where we're going to hold up this week. Uh, there are a lot of details that we'll go into next week with that because things did shift quite majorly from that point
Yeah.
forward. And like I said, that was probably the toughest moment for me.
The whole journey was hard, but it got tremendously harder in that moment and has been hard really ever since.
Yeah, yeah, that was a big turning point, and we had to learn to cling to those moments where things were good for times like that, and that'll make more sense next week. But in the meantime, hope you guys have a great week. We appreciate you guys joining us. And if you've enjoyed it, share with a friend, rate, review, give us feedback. As we've said before, we do read it. We're encouraged by the input that you guys give, really does help us shape the way we go about the show itself and
Mm-hmm.
this story. Um, just a little little nugget that may be exciting. We are discussing plans to bring some guests on soon, and we have some exciting people in mind that we think you guys will really enjoy hearing from, and they have some really great stories, to go along with everything that
Yeah.
we're trying to promote. And so, uh, stay tuned for more information on that. We'll keep you guys updated, but we thought that would be kind of a good time to break it up a little bit and make it fun. But yeah, we appreciate you guys, and another week down.
Yep.
On that note, I'm David,
And I'm Devin.
and this has been the 41 Life. Thanks, guys.
See y'all next week.